So, kia ora everybody, and welcome to today's session. Ko Sarah Washbrook Talking Ingoa. I am one of the deputy chairs at TENS, and I'm here being your host today to help and support with the webinar itself. We're going to start off with our karakia. Maori ora ki I a mātou, arahina mātou I a mātou mahi, ki mihia he huarahi mō te kōpapa o te mātauranga hangarau. A whina atu, a whina mai. Te pō e here nei I a mātou. Hui e, tae ki e. So, like I was saying, welcome to today's webinar. Just for for future reference, this webinar is being recorded and will be hosted up on our TENS YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and you can go and watch it whenever you would like to. The content of the webinar today explores applying systems thinking when preparing for undefined change, which, as we know, is a timely conversation for educators and leaders navigating the uncertainty and complexity in our current educational landscape that we have. We're joined by Milla Inkilä, who supports the learners in matters of contemporary education at AcademyEx. Drawing on her work in inclusive education, co-design and systems thinking, Milla helps educators lead meaningful change while staying grounded in relationships, reflection and real-world impact. Her work focuses on culturally sustaining and gender inclusive practice, bringing both research insights and lived experience to how we approach change in complex environments. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome Milla and pass over. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora. I might share my slides then. Kia ora tātou katoa, ko Milla Inkilä taku ingoa no Whinarana ahau, kei AcademyEx taku mahi, kei kirikiriroa ahau e noho ana. So yes, Milla. Accent comes from Finland, even if I've lived here in Aotearoa for quite a long time, in Hamilton nowadays, the city of the future. And let's see here. My slides. What I thought for today, I kind of tried to prepare like, why are you joining today? I thought you might be thinking like, yeah, how to make good decisions about future when everything is uncertain. Um, how to feel confident what's coming next when you're not even sure what's happening right now. Um, how to stay hopeful about the future when there's so much change in the air. And perhaps could be that you even join just to remember that you're not actually navigating this alone, that we are in this together. And yes, so here we go together. Um, Starting with thinking about futures a bit. Um, if I would ask you to think about future right now, futures, and you can do that, think about the future. You probably start to predict it. That kind of somehow comes naturally for us humans, even if you're not a future teller. Yeah, you're probably a technology educator of some sort that you're here today. But we are not predicting the future today. Yes, we'll dream about that a little bit, but we'll focus on how to navigate that, even if the trying to predict is so human. Um, so yes, we might think about what's going to happen, what will tech look like in 5 years' time, what will education look like in 10 years' time. Even if we start to think about straight away, will the jobs exist? All of that kind of comes in. But I think for me, the longer I've been working in education, which has been for a couple of decades, I noticed there's some familiar names there. So some of you know me, some of you know my background, that I've been a primary school teacher. That's what I studied to become first. I was primary school teacher in Finland. Then I worked in IT, in tech with software engineers for a really long time. And here in Aotearoa, I've been now teaching teachers for over 10 years, as long as we've existed. At first as the Mind Lab and now AcademyEx. less and less it kind of has become interesting to predict the future, but more like how can we actually mold that? How can we affect the future? And how can we affect futures? Because yes, there's no one future. We know that. That's what the S is there for. Um, it will surprise us. It always does. But we can think about possible futures. We can think about our preferred futures. We can think about the choices that might help us then to get to those preferred futures. While we can't control all of that, but we can influence that. And that's kind of, yeah, where my brain tends to go nowadays. And that's where systems thinking comes really, really handy. So that's why we'll focus on that today. Um, to talk a little bit about the change first as the word. Yes, future surprises us, but change surprises us also. Um, Not that many of us were able to predict the global pandemic or um, perhaps how big of a role generative AI has in our everyday lives. Um, some might have been predicting some of that, but none fully. So if I would ask you to think about, for example, in 2019, before the pandemic, and someone would tell you what 2026 right now looks like. For example, for you as an educator, what are the changes that are happening and has happened? You struggle to believe in those, and those are things that you probably couldn't predict. And one thing about change is that, yes, we talk about being faster and faster all the time. And this is the one thing that I like about the definition of change that goes a bit wider than that. Um, so this is written by a really good article. If you haven't looked at that, if you have studied with us really recently, you might have. Um, Anil Shima and Ron Gutman wrote about, yes, about the that change is exponential, um, but and they talk about the speed of change, how it has become faster and faster thanks to technology, mostly. Um, but this also talks about how COVID perhaps kind of presented us a bit of a new normal when it comes to change, since perhaps change is also perpetual, meaning that it's never ending, that it's everlasting, that it's occurring all the time in an ongoing way, and that it is pervasive, that it's unfolding all the time in multiple areas of our lives. Even just you think about education, your practice right now, but you think about, yeah, and other people's practice, those pretend silos at school, it's affecting to many things, affecting to all of those, your personal life in many ways. So yes, there's that exponential, but it is perhaps that 3D, three-dimensional change that they explain. Perhaps there's even four or five, but it's not just that it's faster, but yeah, it's also perpetual and pervasive. And what they say is that they say that to keep pace in this, leaders need to ditch the one hero model, and that they need to be effective so that they can navigate this new reality. And if you've studied with us, you know that our view on leadership is that you're all leaders. If you are an educator, you're a leader. So you are affecting and creating change. So that's something that they kind of lay on you, that your task is to navigate this. They talk about, it's an interesting article otherwise too. They talk about sapient leadership as something that we should um, drive towards. So yeah, really, really good one. If it's kind of the leadership aspect that you're into, I'd say go and have a look at that article in more detail. Um, could be that it's the leadership that ticks you, but could be also that you love when things are complex. I don't think you would be a teacher if you don't. Like your life and your work is complex. Could be that this sort of thing is what you love, or maybe kind of trying to bring order into the complexity of things. Maybe this visual is what helps you. Um, this example is from Rosemary Hipkins that some of you might have seen last time at the TENS conference in Wellington. She was talking there. I had like a fangirl moment being there to listen to her. She's written Teaching for Complex Systems Thinking, a really brilliant book about how we can, as educators, do that and how we can teach that to our students. And she uses this as an example. She uses this as a showing the causal loop. It's that red one there. This is about informing uh, policy making in response to COVID-19 pandemic, just kind of how complex that is. But I'm showing that relating to the change. Yes, it's perpetual, pervasive, exponential, but life and real life is really, really complex for our students, but also for us. And that's why, yeah, Hipkins is saying that we should really be teaching this, not just to ourselves, but to our students, since we humans actually can handle complexity. We are born into complex systems. Uh, we can do and deal hard shit. Can I say that? Your teachers, yes, I can. Because yes, that's what that's what you deal with all the time. Another good book that which is my favorite in systems thinking, which kind of shows why we perhaps love and are good in complex things, is that we want to do things better. That's a human nature. Being Better, Better is another book that I might be quoting for you today, relating to systems thinking as well. So, um, the just to kind of get started and keeping you engaged there, I would post a little Slido if you have your smartphone there nearby, or you can go to slido.com and put the code 3176024 in, or that QR code with your phone. Um, the I hinted this before. I said that, yeah, what if I would say that someone would explain what 2026 looks like um, back in 2019 for you? What would surprise you the most? And this could be like, yeah, relating to your mahi or relating to something else. Just the last 7 years. Good, there's some participants joining in. Good, there's quite many of you. I'm hoping that we get some things there. Let's see if the surprises are similar. Hmm. You know, maybe I'll put my thoughts there too. I realize that I can't share my sound from my computer, so I can't put music on. Maybe I'll put my own answers in as well. Mm. Good. So there's yeah, technological growth and political shifts. Our political shift is there twice. Definitely, yes. Students using AI, politics, politics, politics. Big things. I thought so, indeed, and those affecting educational change. Yep, I think that's the number one whenever someone asks what's the difference between Finland and New Zealand, and then how much can the politicians affect the curriculums and so on. That's definitely one thing that has surprised me. Of course, it can yeah, but it can work either way. But yeah, for as a Finn, it still feels a bit strange. Although, just to share you data, interesting data is that teachers are way more likely to be part of politics in Finland. That's one of the things that there's many of the that who people vote to be MPs, and even on local politics, there's many with teacher backgrounds. So yeah, maybe that's your future. Maybe that's what you're gonna do. Um, yeah, flexible work options after hybrid work, all of that, huge change and so quickly. Indeed, indeed. Um, you can still type for a little bit. And I'll show you what I uh, oh, think if there's anything else. Let's see, scroll down. That confidence is interesting there. Um, the that's good if we are more confident. And I guess confidence is such an important thing. It's interesting, how do we build that when things are uncertain? I'm always positively surprised that that word is the most common feedback from our programs. That's what teachers are coming to AcademyEx for, to become more confident. But then I'm still I'm so humble that they say that that's what they get out of it. But I think one of the reasons is that we become more confident when we can chat with like-minded souls and we see other teachers. We meet weekly and we get to talk about what's on top of our minds, and we get to even just to vent and then dream about the future together, and we realize that we are not alone, and even that brings makes us more confident. Beautiful. And yes, scary. There's and wood yeah, woodwork and cook. Indeed, yes. The just how those silos, that surprisingly those silos are still there. And siloed. That's the next one. Looks like we're on the same waka, all of us. Yes. Um, and yep, that it's still very siloed rather than being interdisciplinary and future focused. That it's like someone was saying, like in some ways strange that we kind of go backwards before we go forwards. That's what I try to remember, that there's many researchers like, yes, Sarah mentioned about the inclusion and gender inclusion. That was one thing that I've been doing a lot of mahi in, and then that's the same recent kind of backlash. But then there's a lot of research saying that that always happens before things move way towards the better, then quickly after that. So I'll try to keep that in mind. Um, watch the when we actually ask, and I do this many times with the teachers, asking like, when you hear the word change, what word comes to mind? And the most common word is fear, almost always. And one of the interesting things, which is good to keep in mind when we talk about change and the unknown future, is that yes, change always tends to create that, like for some of us more, some of us less. But there's this interesting concept of learning anxiety, and this doesn't come from education. It's kind of more work-based things. Um, but any of those things that you just listed, there has been a lot of learning anxiety relating to that, even if it's like going backwards, and then like that for sure creates that. But even if it's just something completely new, and even if it's something really exciting, there's fear of loss of power and position. There's fear of temporary incompetence. There's the feeling confident there. Subsequent punishment even, and loss of personal identity for us educators, and loss of group membership. Really powerful things, and good to remember that, kind of notice those in ourselves and also in others, and realize that that is natural. And many times that's learning anxiety is the obstacle that we have to kind of acknowledge before we can learn something new. The more we have put into the old knowledge kind of effort, the harder it is to let go. And that's why there's resistance. That's why there's defensiveness. That's what the learning anxiety causes. These ideas come, so I have a source there that you can look at, but Edgar Schein is the one who has created these. This is Creating Cultural Change, which is from the 90s already. So it's not that new, but it has been quoted recently a lot because of the 3-dimensional, 5-dimensional change. And yes, education is one of those things which is changing a lot. And just to give you some ideas, what could it be if we believe OECD about the future of education? This is what they kind of, um, I guess you could say predict. They kind of call them these scenarios, yes, more. What could education in 2040 look like? And what I'll ask you next, just so that you know while you're listening, I'll ask you to think about what would you say would be the most desirable option of these ones? So out of these four. So they say that one, or they claim that school, one option is that schooling is extended, which means that it stays pretty much recognizable, similar than it is today, but it becomes even bigger, becomes better connected, more personalized through technology, what we talk about a lot. So this in this option, schools remain the primary place where learning happens. Um, and then there's the other one, which is education is outsourced. And this would mean that in 2040, learning would be increasingly happening outside traditional schools. So families, businesses, online providers, um, technology platforms would have like play a big role in that. So instead of school providing most of the learning, learners would build personalized programs for themselves. There would be multiple providers looking at online face-to-face. Everybody would kind of pick and choose. Third option is that schools are learning hubs. So schools still exist, but they are more kind of community hubs. So connecting local organizations, connecting to experts, projects, real world challenges. Um, could be that teacher would, like a tech teacher, would spend more time connecting students with those businesses, with maker spaces, EV, community projects, than teaching actually in the classroom. Or perhaps it's the fourth one that you prefer. Fourth one is a learn as we go one, which is so that learning happens all the time, everywhere. So there's kind of no distinction between school life learning or life and work. So that's kind of school and life that would be irrelevant. It happens all the time. So instead of going somewhere called school, people would kind of consciously learn through work, through projects, AI tutors, communities of different types, digital communities, digital networks, and this is kind of through their lives. Not either or options, perhaps, but let's see. What's your preferred option out of those four from OECD? Um, that one is the one where you can uh, choose number one. So the number one would be your most desirable one, and then ranking then second, third, fourth um, in that poll. Say, I think that made a new. So again, looking at taking the QR code or putting the new code in. I can do that. Or could be that it opens that automatically for you. When you click something, it becomes number one, two, three, four, if you haven't done it, and then you can still change the order. Mm. If you could choose, which way would it go? Hard to choose because you straight away start to think like, all right, where am I in that? That's the, oh, will my job be there? Mm. You get to choose which one of those would be the preferred and where would you like to be? Uh, Schooling extended now being number one. So that yeah, similar today, but having a bigger role. We want that. We want more power. more connected, more personalized. Of course, the younger your students, the like we tend to think like that. It's like, oh, where else can they be? That we need something, but then yeah. Um, and then schools as learning hubs after that, um, which yeah, I think sounds quite interesting. That's the one with the more kind of connecting to maker spaces, connecting to experts and EWE and so on, and then um, education outsourced after that, and then the learn as you go. Yes. Thank you for those. Um, the I have another question, and this is really similar. I'm going to change just one word. Um, what do you think is the most likely one out of those? So instead of what is your preferred one, what do you think will happen? Interested to see, will the results change? Let's see. What is the most likely one to happen out of those ones? Mm. Could be that you believe that you are a fortune teller, and then what you, let's see, is it the same? Oh, outsourced. Oh, yes, the one. Oh, that's more likely. Oh, is it businesses starting to do that? It is interesting to personally to see like how many of our students that come to study with AcademyEx and have studied during the last 10 years, how many are moving to the private sector to do things. And well, in a way, I'm kind of happy. I love that it is actually educators creating those tools. So the uh, one of the projects that I did in IT myself was that we developed learning analytics. And then it was really interesting to hear from teachers because we actually developed it with teachers. And then that there were people like me who were responsible of that, so who knew about education and how often they said that how annoying it is when the apps and tools are created by people who don't know about education. So, in a way, it's nice, but then yes, then we have to move to work for that industry to some extent at least. And schools extended is still there, but yeah, hubs and learn as you go. Hey, thank you for those. Um, the could be that, of course, like OECD couldn't think of something like could be that it's actually something completely different. And to be exact, those OECD ones um, are more, they developed those things to just to make us think, to think about kind of testing our assumptions that what do we assume will happen. And yeah, you can use those if you want to, but then they're saying that they're not forecasts as such, that they're more scenarios that maybe we'll be positively surprised and maybe it's actually something completely different. And that's what I would like you to say next. What if it's something way better and different than what OECD said? Um, what if, um, and I'm thinking for this question, you could even think about like, let's say it's 2040 and you can picture a day, you just had like an amazing day, just like perfect day as a tech teacher somewhere close to 2040. Yes, it could be earlier. It could be that you're retired in 2040, or maybe not. Maybe that's the change. But anyways, like a day that you can think about in the future. So a perfect day. You loved your job. Students were engaged. You were thriving. Everyone was motivated and learning. What was different? What has changed for that? Um, yeah, what would it be? Um, your choice now, not OECD's. What is it? Mm. More flipped classrooms happening. Yes, so learning happening outside and then using the time in the classroom for meaningful projects. Teachers have agency. Indeed, perhaps relates to those things that you mentioned earlier, that it's not political things. Yes, it's not related to education, exactly. Both education and health sit outside of political agenda. Mhm. Technology better provided and supported to assist in engagement with students. Blended models, co-teaching, flexible learning opportunities to suit students' interest and location. Ah, yes. There will be some quite big, big things. And um, some of those there's kind of tech mentioned, but not kind of about just about particular tools as such. In uh, equity, equality, indeed, actually quite big things, kind of more, I guess those could be called systemic things in some ways, and even like teacher agency. Yeah, it is more kind of things. It's the bigger system um, that we want to change. Indeed. Ah, the so yes, we can start to talk about that systems thinking. Um, so this now comes to systems thinking into just like not predicting, but actually thinking about the future and then acting. That's what matters. And we need to, and I realize this with many of our teachers who come to us, that it is like we want the system to change, and then we realize that yes, we play a role in that, and we can influence what the future looks like. And yes, it's sometimes like, oh, I'm just one person, but then at the same time, there's many other ones who feel the same. So um, um, we'll talk about now how to apply systems thinking. And if we think about systems thinking, it kind of looks at beyond events. Since many times when we think about future, we think about that there's a certain event that has to happen, or even when we plan something and we want to change something, like let's make an event, and then it's actually not event, it's more the conditions for the change. So that's where the systems thinking comes from. So that we have to like change the conditions to make something more likely, or if we don't, then it's less likely that thing to happen. But yes, thinking about those preferred desirable futures, making them more likely, that's where it comes in. And yes, I noticed some of your names there that you've been studying with us. Um, Depends on how recently. Like we've been for years talking about systems thinking, but in different ways. So for some of you, this is a new thing. So where does the word system come from, and what does it mean in systems thinking? So this is these words here are the ones that I thought about when 8 years ago I met the author of the Being Better Better. I was presenting a paper in Wollongong in Aussie, and I was heavily pregnant. And I was really excited to chat with him when he wanted to chat after my presentation, where we talked about actually makerspaces. How do we use makerspaces with educators at the Mind Lab, which we probably were back then? Yes, called. Um, the and that was another fan moment actually, because Raimo P. Hämäläinen has written this with Esa Saarinen, who I just adore. Both Finnish, but they've written this with a Kiwi. So Rachel Jones was one of the authors of this book, and I got the book, and I was reading that on the flight back to Aotearoa. And they start the book by explaining that one of the ways that what kind of shows how good we are in systems thinking is that we are born into one. We are born into a family. And families are really complex. It's a complex system, and they're all different. Um, and that's what I was thinking, like, oh, and there's going to be a new system, like we're going to have our first child is going to be born. So definitely you can think about as a system, you can think about whānau, you can think about iwi, marae, sports teams, yeah, neighborhoods, your workplace, or even wider like ecosystems or education systems and so on. And yes, those change all the time. They can stay the same or they can change. Even that whānau that we created changed 3 years after that fully because we got a new member from Oranga Tamariki. We got to know other systems at that point also in the society. But I was just thinking about that, Sarah, when I saw you today, because like I remember at the TENS conference, I made a plushie and it was for that person who became part of our whānau through Oranga Tamariki. So thanks for the e-textile, brilliant thing. And it was really, really helpful. But yeah, he got that as a souvenir back from Wellington last time. But yes, so even these things change, but we kind of, we families and whānau is one of the best ways that we kind of realize how complex systems work and how one thing affects to another and how we kind of, yeah, how we navigate systems. And we are really, really good at those as human beings. But there's certain things that we can learn to be better at, and systems thinking is brilliant in that to teach us that. And this is one of the most common stories in systems thinking. I'm going to talk about the water of systems change today. And in this story, which comes from the source I'll show you soon, a fish is swimming along one day when another fish comes by and asks, "How's the water?" And then the first fish just stares blankly, and the second fish and then says, like, "What's water?" So if you've ever moved from country to another, you definitely see like you're kind of like, oh, you see the water and it's so different, and then others are just swimming there, how the systems work. You change to a different school and you wonder how does it work, and the others don't even notice it's there or that something needs changing in the water. So that's what the water is, the system surrounding us that we don't even see quite easily. And this is the model of water of systems change. Some of you have seen this if you've studied with us, most likely, but a good one, I need to come back to this often. So if the water is the system, the water of system change is this model. This is sometimes made to look like um, a iceberg, so that those ones there on the top you can see quite easily. Those are the ways to change things, but then the ones that are more hidden are those relational, semi-explicit, implicit things below. There's also beautiful, there's our river versions in Aotearoa, there's the Ao Maori, the Reo Maori versions both out there. And so there's these six independent conditions that are either holding things the same or being able to change things, or kind of the clues to change things. Social, environmental problems in particular, those bigger ones that many of you were dreaming actually changing. Um, yes, these are intertwined and kind of connected, but it's quite good that we focus on changing things. And there's many saying that most importantly, like, yes, there's people who change the policy and say like, oh, that's the way to change things. But then like if you don't change the relationships and power dynamics, the policy is not going to do any difference. So the lower the thing, the more leverage and more kind of you can, well, iceberg, you can't like it just kind of ripples back if you don't change the underlying connections because or the conditions, because those actually weigh more. Mental models there is the one which means our stuck ways of thinking. And if we don't personally change our stuck ways of thinking, the policy doesn't make any difference. Really, really interesting model. And this is one task. Let's see if I still get you to do something. There's quite many of you there still. Let's see if you would be open to think about. I made a Padlet that has those conditions, and there's a little definition also on those conditions if those are new to you. 6 things. Which of these could you use in relation to changing things for better? You wanted to do something different. You wanted there to be some change. What could you do differently? What, yeah, where could you push the system to change? And if you want to, you can even say to your favorite generative AI tool to say, what do you want to be changed? And then say, like, could I use the um, 6 conditions of order of systems change in that one? Help me to ideate what could I do? Um, if you could put those to Padlet, that would be lovely. Um, could be that that's a task that I'll ask you to do also after this. You might have some questions, but that's, yeah, perhaps that's your homework today. I want to leave some room for questions at the end too. And there's a couple of last things that I'm gonna say. But yeah, that would be your task, yeah, before you go to sleep today. Or maybe there's something smaller that you actually wanted to change in your practice. There's I forgot to say that the previous previous slide. Let's see. Can I put the previous slide on because my there, I'll put that back on. So that document there, link there, will share that with you also somehow, but that's a freely available, the order of systems change document. This particular version here, I forgot to say that that was actually drawn by the now 7-year-old who was in my stomach in Wollongong while flying. This happened to be my part of my own master's. I did my second master's, Master of Change and Organizational Resilience with AcademyEx, embracing ACO. Many of you have been able to study full time with us. Worked full time, studied part time with us. So I wanted to do the same, and that model was part of how I was driving change. So that's why that particular drawing is drawn by a 7-year-old, but the stuff there is the same. But yes, give it a go next time when you want to run change. And the one of the people behind that model is Peter Singer. Could be that you know that from the fifth discipline or learning organizations. Um, the That's one of the backgrounds, since the fifth discipline in the famous fifth discipline book is the systems thinking. And what they write in the World of Systems Change, they say that real and equitable progress, like many of you are after, requires exceptional attention to the detailed and often mundane work of noticing what is invisible to many. So remember, if that's what you do, that's really, really important. So they also say that kind of it's important to notice what's keeping things the same and then realize that those same things are also, yeah, the keys for the change. And the what I wanted to finish with um, today is that I think, and this relates to navigating, that definitely wayfinding leadership is one key to that. Um, if you've studied recently with us, could be that I've been also quoting this book, which is in Finnish, unfortunately. Happens to be my old practicum teacher back in Finland. She's written a book about humane systems, kind of building humane systems in knowledgeable pedagogical collectives, I guess would be one translation of the book. Um, and she uses Waka as a model, or SHIP as a system thinking model. And I'm really waiting for someone to come and study with us and make a Waka version so that there's a wayfinding systems thinking model for educators. Maybe that's you who come to study with AcademyEx and do that, because wayfinding is such a brilliant metaphor. Kind of acknowledges that uncertainty, that we don't know exactly where we're going. We can't control the weather. We can't we can't control the ocean. We can't, yeah, even that destination could be that it's a bit unknown, but we can still navigate. We can do things and move things for the better. So that's, yeah, we know Pacific navigators without GPS, detailed maps, all of that. We know that. Not being able to control the winds and currents, but still being able to learn and read those to really, really handle complex things, kind of, yeah, looking at the patterns and relationships and signals and conditions for change. Yeah, that's systems thinking in modern Western words, perhaps. Um, so yeah, even if you can't predict the future, notice the systems that you are part of. Um, make make waves and bigger waves, and it's easier to do bigger waves together. Identify what's good, and then yeah, you will have influence, and you do. Um, and we are here to support you on that mahi. We are here to support all your peers if you already studied with us. Some of you already have the masters with us. So I might actually give over to you, Lisa, for a little bit. I'm the facilitator, one of those. We have heaps, of course, the on those programs, but you, Lisa, know best about, for example, the new scholarship and so on.
Thank you, ka pai,
Thank you.
Milla. Just really briefly, we do from what you can tell already, AcademyEx, the Mind Lab, is non-traditional and really, really practical. So we do a postgrad certificate in digital and collaborative learning. It's contemporary skills, but just as much changing the pedagogy of teaching, student-led, resilience, failure, collaboration, really, really positive, powerful stuff. That program used to be mainly primary and secondary, but more and more we see it as anyone who shares knowledge. We have an intake in August, and we have a very, very special scholarship for registered teachers. It brings the fee down from 3,625 to 500. So if you're a registered teacher, how you apply is you apply to enroll and you apply for a scholarship at the same time, and you're told within 5 business days of applying. The scholarship is because we see, we feel, we hear all that you are dealing with, and we know the program helps. We want to help. So that program starts at the end of August. It's 32 weeks with one session live online a week of 90 minutes. There are a couple of block days that can be done face-to-face or live online. It's up to you. You don't need to choose up front. The sessions are 6:30 to 8. We've had over 5,000 through this program, and it's built for those working full-time. For those who have done our postgrad, we have an intake in July for our Master of Contemporary Education. It is the main focus of this master's is a change project of your choice. So it could be your work focus, your passion. It's up to you. We walk alongside you to get that thing done. So that starts in July, and we have a limited number of 50% scholarships available for that program. Tangata Whenua, Pacific, ACO, Taipeki over 55, and Impact, the intent to do good for the world, people, the planet. We also have a range of other options to help you, including there's early bird discount of 10% if you enroll before a month prior to the start of the program. We have templates to approach your work or any groups or associations you're part of, and we have a list of external opportunities out there. We also, if you know you wanted to do a master's, you can start our master's in August as well. And that's the 3 parts of the master's. So the postgrad, and then part 2 is looking at what might be your project, the research, ethics, and more. And part 3 is you implement that change project. so your school, your students, your community feel the benefit. It's not something you do and put in a drawer. Just to let you know, we charge per part and we send out invoices 2 weeks prior to the part. I'm here to help. We all are here to support you. So if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. And I guess for our postgrad, the part 1 of masters, digital and collaborative learning is what it's called. But a big part from, I'd say, day 1, it has been about leading change. So that's the thing. I know that there's a lot of tech teachers, and we have a lot of tech teachers, but like, yes, there's always something that you haven't looked at, and you focus on what you want to focus on in your projects and in your assessments. And yeah, it's for some people, it's more that change and leadership aspect, which is the main reason to come in. And for others, some it's collaboration, some it's the digital things. But yeah, it's a combo of all of those.
And the program's changed a lot in the time we've done it. So way back when, there used to be quite a number of assessments. Now there's 4 assessments, 2 of which can be done collaboratively. Break them up, work to your strengths and submit them together. You can work in groups of up to 4. So life is better with others, so reach out to others. And the last assessment's an innovation on your practice. So really, really practical. Go apply.
Well, kia ora. Thank you very much for obviously taking your time out today to come and present to everybody. I just want to say a big thank you. Anybody who's still online and wants to ask a question to Milla or Lisa, please pop that question down into the Q&A, and I'm sure they will be more than welcome to actually have a go at explaining things a little bit further. I think from my point of view, I was really interested in looking at obviously the overarching systems thinking aspects, but seeing that it can be quite holistic, which is what you seem to be quite looking at that big picture, but we can also shrink it right down. So I was also considering it from like a technology education lens and thinking, well, actually, we could go right down to what does this look like when we're implementing this curriculum change that's going on within our departments, within our faculties. Because I thought, well, look at this. I mean, we're all about change, and you were mentioning things like perpetual, pervasive, and exponential. Well, if that's not technology and the purpose of technology, I really don't know what is. I mean, it's like it's actually written directly for our learning area as opposed to say maybe some other learning areas out there.
Indeed. Indeed. One thing that I actually didn't mention, which, for example, Rosemary Hipkins talks about, is that, of course, you can look at technology as a system, like technology systems. That's what many of you are actually teaching. So it relates even to kind of that micro level. You can look at that. And the holistic, that's the beautiful thing about her mahi, that it's kind of more even like linking that with the ao Maori, like how Western way is kind of catching up in some ways and kind of realizing the connectiveness of everything, and then the beautiful models that can help us to navigate the complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we're looking from this like smaller kind of system, it's like a subsystem. Let's look at technological systems from the curriculum. It's things like yeah, we could use those 6 conditions of systems change to help us to review what we're currently doing and consider what it is we want to do in the future and how can we enable those decisions, whether it's how we teach technology, or whether it's looking at content for teaching, or whether it's looking at diversity of our students and the different things that are happening in our worlds that we're going on at the moment.
Yeah.
Really interesting. All right. Just excuse me a second. I'm just going to check and see whether we've got, there's a Q&A here. Oh yeah, we have got a question. It says, is there a good way to encourage school leaders to analyze our school system and work on ways for successful change implementation?
Oh, that's a big question. Like many, many. And then I guess it's more kind of schools, your own school system, if that's the way to look at it, then definitely. From even just from there's many different models. Of course, I talked about just the order of systems change today. There's it. sometimes it's even like mindsets, that it's even like having a particular mindset, like when looking at the system and looking at how we look at that, to keep mind in different mindsets. Let's see, there was one that we just talked about. There's the let's see if I can find that quickly. Because we talked about systems thinking flipcards, and there was just one student who was saying how they use that in school. But now, can I find it quickly? Of course I can't. Trying to Google flashcards. That's a Quizlet. No, there's the original somewhere else. I think it's here. Thinking Studios and Habits of Systems Thinkers. This one. Let's see, I'll show you here. This is just like one resource, which is also easy to use with students and with, of course, other ones too. If I'll share my screen again here, which are flip cards, how to look at what are the different ways, like change perspectives to increase understanding. So some of these you can see that these link, for example, this is something that design thinkers think about when kind of changing things for the better. For example, like designing better ways for school to operate. The similar things like what's the power of this? Am I open to other viewpoints? How do different points of view influence the way I understand the system? So, of course, you have to look at kind of one thing at a time, but the realizing which one of these ways of thinking about making systems better would help the most in that case. Is it thinking about it from the student point of view, from the parent point of view, from the what I like about these models is that it's not never ending, because people are like, oh, there's so many viewpoints to think about. No, there's not. And we can like, all right, now we'll focus on this one. We'll think about it from these important viewpoints, or that even the conditions of systems change. I like that it limits that there's 7 and not that there's 850. And it makes it a bit easy, even when talking about big things. Or there's the recognizing that a system structure generates its behavior. There's different cards. I think I can't remember how many there are in this one, but these are just kind of more, reflections of what's a way that a systems thinker is thinking. And many times, yes, leaders are the ones who, we should be doing this. So maybe it's one good source for school leaders to think about.
Thank
Yeah,
you. We have
yeah.
had another question come through. It says, if I'm having success with the change with my team, how do I successfully share that with the fellow team leaders who have their unique teams without telling them just to copy me?
Just to cover you, yeah. Good. And I think that's the number one thing I kind of, even through these years, the interesting thing is that someone has solved something with who others struggle with, and how do we share that? The Of course, my viewpoint is that I love what I do because teachers from different schools are coming together, and then when it's someone from different school, they tend to listen a bit more. And then like, oh, you've done that. And they're like, oh, and then they go to their own school. I was like, oh, it's somehow a bit easier when if it is the one next to it. The find find someone from that team to kind of share that with, not to kind of, like, they're not gonna do it just like that. But I guess it's those success stories. That's usually what is the best thing. Like if we hear that something has actually made a difference for the student learning, then that's the key. And then I guess it's always like the re reducing the pain, like what pain is reduced. If you tell that, that's usually the way to get other people to change. Is that like there's this way, and it makes, whose life does it make easier? The team leader's life, for example. If it does, then they're quite likely to share more and try it. Or maybe it's the other people, because, well, team leader wants the other people life be easier. So I think it's the yeah, it tends to be the outcomes, but also how does it help us? Those little kind of nuggets there, and even sharing that. Sometimes it is that you get someone from that team to see that because it might be easy and it goes that way into the team, which also brings agency for that team that it kind of comes from within the team. Someone suggesting that. Yeah. Yeah, it's annoying that sometimes in schools, like teams are kind of competing with each other, which is not, yeah, not
Yeah,
nice.
celebrate the successes, I think. If you can show
Yeah,
that you and your team are doing really well in something, then others are usually quite interested to find out, well, how did you do that?
yeah. And share the secrets.
Yeah.
And make it sound like, well, it's actually this, that way. Yeah. If it's a secret, it's kind of, yeah, it's like, oh, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to say thank you very, very much for taking your time out to come and obviously present today. I am sure that obviously people have taken a wealth of knowledge or just even a little snippet to think about a little bit further and deeper in terms of systems thinking. And obviously, we all know we're going through a lot of change in a lot of areas related to education at the moment. So it's nice just to actually sit back and just breathe through it sometimes and just take that time just to think. So once again, thank you very much for joining us today. For our next webinar with the team from AcademyEx and Milla again, is for those people who want to join us, you can scan the QR code, or you can find this through the TENS website. But as you can see here, the next one is exploring the human ability to build trust, navigate challenges, and create meaning together in education now and in the future. So I think today's session is a great segue into obviously exploring this a little bit further and a little bit deeper. So that's for your diaries, Thursday the 18th of June, once again 4 till 5. And don't forget that we also have our normal standard TENS webinars once a month as well. They're usually on Wednesdays, so keep an eye out for those too. Like we said, this session is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the TENS YouTube channel so that you can watch again, or you could even maybe share this with some of your leads in your schools and see if they want to watch it, and then a little bit more too. Today we will finish with our karakia. Once again, Milla and Lisa, thank you very much for taking your time out today to come and join us. Kia mato katoa, ko muto mato ia mato mahi, ia mato ko papa hoki. Arahina mato, kia koe, mato ia mato hei papa, kia whakatapua, mato ki ngā kōpapa, me ngā mea e whakapono. Mena kitea mai mato. Kia ora everyone, kia kite.
Rakiteano.